body chasing the truth.
So I'm going to explain to you why Joe Rogan is really jealous of Brandon Schaub. Joe Rogan and his, little band of comedians, they're all jealous of Schaub. And when they set that narrative, that Schaub is a bad athlete, Schaub isn't funny and stand-up comedy, it's all out of jealousy. So we're going to get into the psychological reasons why they do it. We're going to break down first the intervention with Rogan and Schaub about him continuing to fight in the UFC.
Oh man, it was just critiquing the fight. I felt like I was doing good, mixing some things up. I was loading up on my punches. He used his reach better than he's done before in earlier fights. He was more patient, not flying in.
He had a nice wide stance too.
Yeah, we want him to come in, and the wide stance, when you stall, I started to throw inside leg kicks, which I should have thrown a little more, and I threw a head kick. And then some of the critique I've been getting is, how on the ground could you let him get the mount and do this stuff? When he hit me with the uppercut, I was out of it. And my initial reaction was, I guess, looking at the replay, to go, it looks like I went for a takedown. He kind of threw me to the ground. I came to with him on top of me. I came to as he punched me. That woke me up. I went for a heel hook out of mount, and my body just wasn't responding. You can see, it's kind of a half-assed attempt. My leg go real slow, and he just kind of gets out of it. So then I turn over, he hits me again. Then I'm back to normal. I'm cool. He's on top of me, pound. It's doing zero damage. I'm not. There's no blame on Mario Yamasaki. None of that. You know what I'm saying? The blame's on me for eating that uppercut. That's on me 100%. I shouldn't have been in that position. However, under those circumstances, I was talking to Mario, going, do not stop the fight. He's hit me in the back of the head. Don't stop the fight. I'm fine. I'm looking at him wording this. Do not stop the fight. There's 10 seconds left, too. I heard the 30. I'm conscious of that. And then I can hear my corner going, 15 seconds, shot, 15 seconds. So I just remember talking to Mario, being like, do not stop it, man. And then he stopped it. And then there you go.
He had to stop the fight, though. The way you were flattened out like that, you were just keeping your hands up by your head.
Defend when there's no damage. I think you have to take it case by case. I'm like, homeboy.
I don't know about that, Brandon. When you're getting punched in the back of the head by a heavyweight, they have to take your safety into precaution. So I agree with Rogan from that perspective. You were flattened out, and even though it's the end of the round, that's really not the referee's issue that it's the end of the round. You're taking punches to the back of the head by a professional fighter that's a heavyweight.
He's talking to me while defending himself. Yeah. It's not like I was eating punches.
Well, he was hitting you, But
I definitely see Schaub's point of view too. So that's a tough call.
You were flattened out. A lot of things look bad about that fight. You were lunging with your punches instead of getting there with your footwork and then launching things from the proper distance. You were really reaching and loading up. You looked very stiff. You didn't look fluid. You just didn't look good. It didn't look like you were well prepared. Your movement just didn't look like an elite fighter's movement. What you were doing was very, very stiff. It was very stiff, and it was a lot of apprehension in your movement. You could see the way Travis is moving.
One question for you, Joe. If you had Tony Ferguson on the show, and you supposedly weren't expected to be super critical, like you agreed before you went on the show, would you talk to Tony Ferguson like this? Because if anybody needs to talk to, it's definitely Tony Ferguson. That's a whole different story.
His boxing was very clean, good technique, good movement.
I think you're only doing it because it's Schaub, and deep down inside, you have no respect for Schaub. But let's continue.
He's a bad motherfucker. I was worried about you coming into this fight. I can tell you that right now. I worry about your commitment to fighting, and I worry about where you stand. Not your commitment to training. Not your commitment to training, not your commitment to give it your all. I think.
Hold on, let's break that down. He said, I'm worried about your commitment to fighting, but not your training. That makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. So if you're fighting, you have to train. Then Rogan says, well, not your training. Well, what do you mean then? Joe, that makes absolutely no sense other than you're being overly critical. And Schaub is and he even says, really, like, what the F are you talking about? I do 2 sessions a day, all year round. But let's continue.
I think you have one foot out the door. I think you're looking. You disagree? I think you're looking at where the future is going to take you, and that you can't do this forever. And I think that's a very dangerous place to be in fighting. You're a smart dude, and the problem with smart dudes is smart dudes think about
Man, he is pissed. Schaub, the steam is coming from underneath that hat. He is mad.
You think about how many you've already had, how many you got coming up, how much damage you're taking in training. When does damage start to show up in your life? The reality of your skill set, where you at now, I don't see you beating the elite guys. I don't see you beating Cain Velasquez.
Just in case nobody knows, Brandon Schaub, he was ranked like number 10 in the world overall heavyweight, number 10 in the world. So all these guys that just like to mock Schaub, right? Schaub played Division I football for Colorado. He wasn't any good, this and that. 99.9% of the people won't play Division I. Not only will they not play Division I, they won't play at Division III. And even less than 1% of those people will actually get on the field and play. So I know it's cool to hate on Schaub, right? Oh, he sucks as an athlete. He played Division I football. He was ranked number 10 in the world in heavyweights at UFC. 99.9% of the population will never, ever do that in even one sport, never mind 2. Now he's a stand-up comedian, so let's watch more of the video. And he's a stand-up comedian, and he's making money and making a living and making millions of dollars off it.
Guys.
Again, more accomplishments than 99.9% of the people on the planet will ever accomplish in their life. But hey, it's always cool to hate on Schaub and say that he's a loser and he's not good at anything.
I don't see you beating Junior Dos Santos. I don't see you beating Fabricio Verdum. You came into fighting fairly late in life. You're a good athlete. You're a strong guy. You're a big guy. And you can do a lot of things because of that. And you're very dedicated. You're very disciplined.
Translation, he's trying to say that it's only because of his size and not skill. Because I'm sure in Rogan's delusional mind, he's actually more skilled than Schaub, but he's not as big. Okay, Rogan, well, if that's the case, there are weight classes. Why didn't you fight at 155? Why didn't you fight at 170?
And you get shit done. But there's a reality of fluidity of movement, of mechanical efficiency of movement that happens when you get a guy who's trained his whole life at a certain aspect of MMA, whether it's wrestling, whether it's kickboxing, whether it's jiu-jitsu. There's a fluidity to their movement that you don't really have. And it's not that you don't try hard. It's not that you're not dedicated. It's not that you're not disciplined. It's not that you're not intelligent. There's shit that other people can do that you can't do. If you had a wrestling match with Cain Velasquez, how well do you think you'd do?
Straight up wrestling?
Yeah.
I think people would be surprised.
Really? Mm-hmm. You think so? Mm-hmm. I think you'd be surprised. I really do. I mean,
it's just straight disrespectful. Joe, have they ever just straight wrestled? No. So how would you know? Just because he's Schaub and he's Cain and you declared yourself the expert? What makes you the expert, Joe? What makes you any other different than any other guy that watches UFC that happens to train in Muay Thai or Jiu-Jitsu or whatever art that you want to train in? Why are you just the supreme expert and you know for a fact that Cain would destroy Schaub in wrestling? Why are you so confident? They didn't actually. Why don't you have them wrestle before? Why wouldn't you at least have footage of them wrestling before you said this? You know why you're saying this? Because deep down inside, you don't have respect for Schaub. You don't respect him as an athlete. You don't respect him as a comedian, and you don't respect him as a person. And then you hide behind. We're gonna get into what you hide behind in a minute.
He fuck you up. There's a certain amount. There's a bridge between you and the very best guys in the world, and I don't know if you can cross that bridge. That's
the very best guys in the world. He was ranked number 10 heavyweights. He is a top 10 heavyweight in the world. He is one of the best heavyweights in the world. So Rogan, what do you talk? Where are we going with this? Joe Rogan secretly despises and hates Schaub. Let's go.
The reality of life. You're a very good fighter. That's not what the issue is. The issue is, can you become a champion? If you can't become a champion, are you comfortable with getting knocked out 3 or 4 more times over the next 5 or 6 years? You know, and that is a possibility. It's a possibility. It might not happen. You might be okay, but it also might happen. It might happen 2 fights in a row. It might happen, you know. I mean, if you have to have a rematch for some.
But wait, he went right for it. You're gonna have to be okay with getting knocked out 3 or 4 more times. Joe, if he's your friend that you respect and you love so much, don't you think maybe you could have said something like, well, you might, have to lose and deal with some losses? Right away, you went for just ultimately mocking the guy, your so-called friend.
Look, if Travis Browne loses his next fight and you win your next fight and you have a rematch with Travis Browne by some strange, unforeseen circumstance, it's a fucking tough fight for you, again, and it very well could happen the same way, again.
Or it could happen the other way, for sure.
It could, but he's more fluid on his feet. He's more lethal. Like his ability to close the distance and land shots, he has an extra speed, an extra ability to connect that I don't see from you.
I don't necessarily, and you know me, you're my boy. I don't agree with everything you're saying either.
Okay, the Orlovsky fight looked like you couldn't pull the trigger. Look, you were telegraphing the right hand. It was your attacks were real obvious. Like. Yeah. It was real obvious what you were.
Schaub is such a threat to Rogan because Schaub is everything that Rogan wanted to be, but didn't even risk trying to become it. So he just mocks and destroys everything that Schaub does. And he lets his minions do the same thing. And then he, not only do those minions in their inner circle do it, but then that translates through YouTube, where because Rogan's such a big voice and has so much power that everybody in the whole online community feels like they can go at Schaub and say derogatory things and talk about his kids, his wife, how he sucked at everything. Again, Brandon Schaub in sports, in life, in comedy has accomplished more than 99.9% of the people on the planet ever will. And if you even gave them 5 lifetimes to do in a row, they probably still couldn't accomplish the things that Schaub did.
Attempting to do. You were being very predictable. And Arlovsky was stiff as hell. He was so nervous. And you couldn't close the deal on him. You couldn't get in on him. You couldn't land shots. I thought you should have won that fight, but I thought it was a terrible fight. If I'm a guy who's a talent scout and I'm looking at potential world beaters, I'm looking at guys who can fight at the elite level or guys who can fight for a world title, based on those performances, I would not say that you're there. You shouldn't be fighting.
Rogan, he's ranked number 10 in the world in heavyweights. What the F are you talking about? He's not an elite fighter. He's top 10 in the world. Not like he's top 200, not like he's top 1,000. Again, Rogan thinking he knows everything about everything all the time, and he's just totally off the mark here.
Fighting at an elite level, if you move a certain way, if you have a certain hitch to your step, if you're making mistakes like lunging forward with punches, you're leaving your chin exposed, you're loading up on the right hand over and over again. You're not recognizing that you're not hiding it enough. You're not recognizing that you're not being diverse enough in your attack. I worry more about you than I do about them. Because I think that you leave more openings, you have more vulnerabilities. What I'm saying, I say with love, 100%.
Oh, here we go.
I'm not saying this because I want to hurt your feelings. This is the last thing I want to do. If I didn't love you, I'd walk out. I wouldn't be willing to do this, and I wouldn't want to do this.
That's just such a crock of shit, right? Because if you really love the guy and he's your so-called friend, don't you think you'd have lunch and discuss this over lunch and not in front of the entire world? Obviously, Schaub wasn't in on this. Obviously, Schaub wasn't expecting this. And that's what Joe and his little coward clique of comedians do, right? Because Schaub is in a no-win situation. He's a UFC fighter. He's a bigger guy. The two things that Rogan and his friends hide behind is, we're just joking. And then the second thing is, there's 3 things. The second thing is, I love you. No, you don't. You're just saying that to cover up for your evilness and the deep down resentment you have towards Schaub. And the last thing you hide behind is, what can Schaub do? He can't beat you up. Because then if he like even slapped you, it'll turn into Schaub the bull. The internet will explode. Schaub the bully. So the only person that gets bullied by Rogan, the online community, and all Rogan's non-funny friends who think they're like the funniest guys in the world. I've never watched Rogan yet, but I'm gonna watch his comedy to see how good he thinks he is. We're gonna get into a video on that, but all of them resent Schaub because Schaub represents everything that they can't be. Excellent athlete in 2 different sports. Millionaire. I mean, Joe's got money, they got money, but now Schaub is going into their field with stand up, and that was the only space that Schaub didn't get involved in, that Rogan had his space where Rogan, he thinks he's like this big time funny comic. That remains to be seen. I'm going to do a video on that. I've never watched his stand up, but if he's anything like the guy Schultz, I can't stand Schultz. Anybody that could sit with their leg that far crossed and be that comfortable. It's like, first of all, he does a few things that are absolutely disgusting. He'll pick his mustache, right, the entire thing, put it in his mouth, and then touch people. It's disgusting. Then he like thinks he's funny, so he says something that's not funny and he's just being obnoxious, and then he just starts laughing out loud at his own stuff. I don't find Schultz funny. I think it's Andrew Schultz or whatever. I don't find him funny whatsoever. And if Rogan is anything like that, he's not going to be funny either. So this is just, it's all the whole online community that constantly goes at Schaub. Rogan is the puppet master who pulls the strings for everybody to go at Schaub, Theo Vaughn, all those guys. Because deep down, Joe Rogan is so jealous of Brandon Schaub, it's not even funny. And every time he opens his mouth, or every time Schaub is around him, you could feel the energy in the room. Like he just dismisses him all the time. Like if he says something, he just dismisses him. Whether it's his athletics, whether it's his stand-up. Joe Rogan is insecure around Schaub. And deep down, he's resentful and he's jealous of Brandon Schaub.